Here's a question nobody asks. What actually makes income primary? The obvious answer is dollars. Your primary income is the bigger number, the one that pays rent, the one your identity is built around, the one your employer calls a salary and you call a career. But that definition has a flaw buried inside it. It measures what a revenue stream is doing right now, not what it is capable of doing. And when you're only looking at current output, you can miss the moment when your second revenue stream quietly becomes more valuable than your first. Not eventually, already, right now. Most people never catch that moment. They just keep calling it a side hustle until someone asks what they do, and they have to decide in real time which answer feels more embarrassing. That confusion isn't a personality problem, it's a measurement problem, and measurement problems are fixable. The word side does a lot of invisible work. It's not just a descriptor, it's a priority assignment. When you call something a side income, you're telling your brain how seriously to take it. You're signaling that it gets your leftover hours, your second-tier attention, your B-team energy. Whatever's left after your real work is done. That framing is useful when a revenue stream is genuinely auxiliary, something you're experimenting with, something generating beer money while you figure out what it is. The framing becomes a trap the moment the revenue stream stops being auxiliary and starts becoming something else. Something with a different ceiling, a different risk profile, a different relationship between your time and your output. At that point, calling it side income isn't a description, it's a suppression mechanism. You're holding a larger system inside a smaller frame and wondering why it can't grow. Let's talk about the actual architecture of income streams, because not all revenue behaves the same way. Your salaried income has a structure. Someone else controls its ceiling. You can negotiate within a band and occasionally break into a new band, but there's a defined limit to what the role pays, set by a company, a market rate, a budget cycle you don't control. Your time inputs and dollar outputs are roughly linear. Work more, earn a bit more. Work less, earn nothing. The risk is concentrated and catastrophic. One decision, made by someone else, eliminates the stream entirely. A business-based revenue stream, whether it's freelance work, a content channel, a product, a service you own, has a different structure. The ceiling isn't externally defined. Revenue can compound rather than accumulate. The relationship between your time and your output is non-linear, especially once you've built distribution, audience, systems, or reputation. Risk is distributed differently. The stream degrades gradually rather than disappearing overnight. These are fundamentally different machines. One is a wage engine, the other is a compounding engine. Neither is inherently better in every situation, but they don't belong in the same mental category, and treating one as the real income and the other as supplemental isn't a neutral choice. It's a structural bet on which machine you trust more. So when does the second stream cross the threshold? Not when it matches your primary income dollar for dollar. That's the obvious threshold, but it's the wrong one. By the time the numbers match, you've already waited too long. You've spent months or years underinvesting in the higher potential system because you were busy protecting the familiar one. The real signal is structural, not numerical. There are 3 indicators to watch. The first is ceiling asymmetry. If your salaried income has a definable top, a salary band, a maximum billable rate, a market comp number you can look up, and your second stream has no equivalent ceiling, the architecture has already diverged. One of these systems can compound, one cannot. That asymmetry matters more than current totals. A salary cap at $120,000 is still a cap. A content business, a consulting practice, a product with distribution. None of those have an equivalent ceiling written into the contract. The dollar gap between them today is almost irrelevant compared to the structural gap in where each one can go. The second is time leverage. This is the ratio between the hours you invest and the value that gets produced. A salary job has roughly a 1-to-1 ratio. Hours in, hours paid. A business with leverage has a different ratio. Content you created once still generates revenue. Systems you built still run. Audience you accumulated still exists. If your secondary stream is starting to generate output that isn't directly tied to your active hours, you're watching leverage emerge. That's not a side hustle, that's infrastructure. The trajectory gap is the one that tends to shock people when they actually run the numbers. A secondary income that grew from $800 a month to $2,200 a month over 12 months didn't just add $1,400, it demonstrated a growth rate. That rate, if it holds, and early-stage compounding systems often accelerate rather than slow, tells you more about 5-year value than the current dollar figure tells you about anything. The third is trajectory gap. Look at the growth rate of each stream over the past 12 months, not the absolute numbers, the rate. A salary that grew 3% while a side income doubled isn't a story about a side income. It's a story about which system is accelerating and which one is stable. Stable is not a problem. But stable and accelerating are not the same thing, and allocating your best attention to the stable one at the expense of the accelerating one is a misallocation that compounds against you with every passing month. Now here's where the uncomfortable math lives. Most people understand opportunity cost in theory. They know that choosing one thing means not choosing another. What they underestimate is how opportunity cost accumulates over time, particularly in systems where early investment compounds. Think about it this way: an income stream with leverage, distribution, or compounding mechanics is more valuable per unit of input earlier in its development than later. The audience you build in year 1 is worth more than the audience you build in year 3, because year 1 audience growth seeds year 2 growth. The reputation you establish early becomes the distribution channel for everything that follows. The skill set you develop while the stakes are low is the skill set you use when the stakes are high. Every month you spend treating a compounding revenue stream as auxiliary is a month of early-stage compound growth you didn't capture. That's not just money left on the table. It's the foundational investment that would have made all future investment more productive. This is the hidden cost of the side label. It's not just psychological, it's mathematical, and it runs in the wrong direction the entire time you're waiting to feel ready. There's a reason people wait anyway, and it's not irrational. The primary income, whatever its structural limitations, has something the secondary income usually doesn't yet: reliability. Reliability is real. The ability to pay rent on a known date is not a trivial advantage, and dismissing it in favor of upside potential is exactly the kind of abstract thinking that destroys real financial stability. The case here isn't to abandon income security in pursuit of optionality. It's something more precise than that. The case is that primary and secondary should be defined by structural role, not current dollar value. Your primary income is the one you're optimizing and investing in. Your secondary income is the one you're extracting from while building something else. At the moment, your second stream demonstrates superior leverage, superior ceiling, and superior trajectory. The optimization should shift. Not the paycheck, the attention, the investment, the hours you bring your best thinking to. Attention is the actual resource. The money follows attention. When you keep investing your best attention in the lower ceiling system while extracting from the higher ceiling system, you're running your portfolio backwards. You're maintaining a position that's already been superseded. There's a version of this that plays out slowly enough that people never notice it happening. The salary gets a 4% raise. The secondary stream doubles. The salary gets another raise. The secondary stream doubles again. At no point does it feel like a crisis. It just feels like a good problem. Until you do the math and realize you've been systematically underinvesting in the faster machine for 3 years running. The compounding you didn't capture in year 1 doesn't come back. The transition doesn't have to be a cliff. In most cases, it shouldn't be. The architecture of a healthy switch looks more like a rebalancing than a jump. You identify the crossing point, the structural crossing, not the numerical one. You begin allocating incrementally more of your optimization bandwidth to the higher potential stream. You build the infrastructure that makes it more reliable: recurring revenue, systems, distribution that doesn't require your daily presence to maintain. You reduce dependency on the salary structure gradually, deliberately, on a timeline you control. This isn't a motivational arc, it's an engineering process. You're redesigning an income system the way you'd redesign any architecture with a structural flaw, methodically, with data, without burning down the building you're still living in. The moment most people describe as taking the leap is usually the moment you finish building the landing pad. The leap is the last thing, not the first. If this kind of systems breakdown is useful to you, the part where we strip away the narrative and look at the actual mechanics underneath, that's exactly what 8-bit economics does every week. Not predictions, not hype. Just the underlying code of how financial systems actually work, explained clearly enough that you can use the information. If this video changed how you're thinking about your income structure, hit subscribe, like it if it landed, and drop a comment. I'm curious where you are in this. Are you maintaining a secondary stream that's already crossed the structural threshold, or are you still in the building phase? Either answer is interesting. Subscribe to 8-bit economics. New videos every week. By the time everyone sees it coming, the smart play is already over. Here's the final thought. The reason this framework matters isn't because everyone should quit their job and run a business. Most people shouldn't, at least not yet, and not for the reasons most people think. The reason it matters is that the word primary implies priority, and priority determines where your best thinking goes, where your discretionary time goes, where your long-term investment goes. If you've labeled your higher potential income stream as secondary, you're allocating against your own interests, not through bad decisions, but through a naming convention. The most important question isn't when do I switch? It's which system am I actually optimizing? Because you're already choosing. You're choosing every week with your hours, your attention, and the version of yourself you bring to each thing. The only question is whether the choice you're making matches the bet you actually want to place.